Happy Halloween, Sheldon. Are you excited for a very scary episode of You Killed It?
I'm actually excited that it's Halloween and I'm just going to wear a tracksuit or a Nike tech suit to work. Just because I'm being super lazy, but it'll be under the guise that it's Halloween.
Does anyone wear Halloween costumes to the office?
I think some people will. They had this huge debate on live on air yesterday about how only losers dress up for Halloween to go to work. Which was an interesting debate because, I think that's a bit of a stretch, but it's not really my thing to dress up for Halloween. Every once in a while, if I'm super tired, will wear a Nike tech suit to work just because I'm lazy, but I'll feel a lot better about it doing it on Halloween because some people who might be offended on those normal days might be like, oh, it's Halloween. Maybe he's just dressed up as a runner or something.
On Saturday, I had to go to a Halloween party after work. I didn't have to. I chose to. And my coworker, he didn't dare me, but he suggested I should wear my Halloween costume for the final 10 minutes of my shift.
Okay.
But it's not like I didn't sit there for 7 hours dressed as Jughead Jones. It was just the last 10 minutes.
That would be a thing. That would be a thing.
I feel like it's fine for the last 10 minutes. You're making your exit.
If you were a challenge competitor, who would you dress up as? Which challenge competitor would you dress up as for Halloween?
That's a super great question. I think the two that lend themselves best are Kara and Kyle because their looks are so strong.
True.
You know what I mean? They have very distinctive style. Mm-hmm. I feel like the rest of them, unless you wore a challenge, one of their uniforms, from competitions.
True.
And I know the challenge Instagram page, I want to say, had some people dressed like that, showing off Halloween costumes, but that's kind of a lame Halloween that's kind of basketball shorts and a shirt with a name on it.
Yeah.
But I feel Kara and Kyle you could actually do it. I guess the problem is if you dress like Nelson, people would just think that you're dressed as Carlton Banks. But
I see what you did there. That sounds like some Nelson shade. Is that a tease for the rest of the episode of You Killed It?
It is.
Dun, dun,
it
dun.
is. We should introduce ourselves. I am John Shidley Hill.
And once again, I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. Let's get down to it there, Sheldon. I guess we have sort of people explaining in various ways how what the balance of power is right now. Polly and Natalie, because they won the power vote last week, they're safe. Bananas and Tony are sort of admiring the admittedly incredible view in South Africa and talking about how they feel safe because no one wants to go up against them. And Kara asks Marie to do some scouting with the Lavender ladies and Team Young Bucks about who they're going to vote for. Because basically, Polly and Allie's vote can be undone if the Lavender ladies and Young Bucks vote as a block. Although, I have a question about that for you. Okay. Why did Bananas and Tony and Kara and Marie and Polly and Natalie not get together to vote the same way? I guess if they did, Kara, Marie, and Bananas and Tony would have to go, they would be on the chopping block. You know what I mean? I think I just answered my own question.
No, but here's the thing, right? So it comes down to two things. First, let's start with Bananas and Tony. I actually got to admit, I was duped at the start of this episode because I was agreeing with Bananas and Tony. I'm like, oh yeah, they're totally right. Why would someone want to take them out? Makes absolutely no sense at all. They should be feeling pretty good about themselves. I was duped by the producers here. And normally I'd like to think that I'm on the other side where I'm seeing what's going on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. Secondly, you mentioned, should they have voted as a group? And I think it comes down to the mentality and the theme that we've been talking about for the entire season of the challenge, right? Which was you're either going to try to avoid getting in the elimination because that's the only way to, try to succeed. And I think that's what you saw from Cara and Marie. Or you have the flip side, which is the Lavender Ladies crew, which, to the surprise of me, for sure, they were just like, listen, we want to take out Bananas. We don't care which one he's going to pick or whoever he's going to pick to go against in an elimination, but we're willing to ride and say, hey, put the chips on the table. We're going for Bananas. Whichever one of us you pick, we're taking you out. And I rep that. You know what I mean? It was like the blatant example of what we've been talking about the whole season. Two sides, two ways to play. Avoid the smoke, or you want all the smoke. And the Lavender Lady crew wanted all the smoke, to my surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, I was impressed with them being, like, down to do their dirty work. And, like, it is the time, I think, to, like, make this move. Later on in the episode, and this isn't key, but Shane makes the point that it's way more advantageous to have Cara and Marie go to a final with you because they are a weaker team. Like, he doesn't quite say that they're a layup, but he sees them as easier to beat in long-term competitions.
So is that a tease for drama that could be coming in? Like, I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I mean, let's be serious for a second here, right? Does that mean there could be some turning on each other in terms of the Lavender Lady crew coming up? I don't know. It's possible, though, right?
It's possible. And, there's only 3 episodes left.
Yes. That is true.
So we are getting down to nut cutting time.
Yeah.
Over in the Redemption House, Kyle and Brad are saying how they are angry with Shane and Nelson. And I think I noted this, that Kaylee calls Nelson her boyfriend, which is big steps for our man Carlton Banks.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you been paying attention to, like, the online Twitter stuff that has been going on in real time? With, like,
I tried
Kaylee and Nelson?
I have not typically, and especially last night I was trying to stay off Twitter because I actually had part of this episode spoiled for me before I watched it.
Oh.
So
that's funny.
So I've been trying to avoid Twitter like the past 24 hours if it's that recent.
So no. This has been going on for like at least a week, I want to say. But there's something going on with Marie and Nelson. I guess they had a back and forth at some point, and then somehow that turned into Nelson saying to Marie, like, "What do you even do as a job?" Something along those lines. And then Kaylee jumped in with the audacity that Nelson must have to question what someone else does for a living. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay.
I thought Nelson was a Sears catalog model.
Someone else pointed out in one of the comments, they were like that he was a strip club manager or something like that. Wasn't that a thing? Like something like that. I don't know. There's something going on. But anyways, like, it was just funny for me to see the fact that, as we're watching the show, these guys are all like, oh no, what's going to happen? My boyfriend, this, that, and the third. Meanwhile, in real life, there's Twitter beef, So I thought that was just interesting to see in real time. But I also, don't know what's going on. So I was checking to see if you had any info. Or I guess we'll throw it out to the crew, the listeners.
If my memory serves, Kaylee has taken shots at Nelson recently as well, like throughout the season. So I have the sense that they're not together, but I don't know.
Interesting.
We also have an interesting scene where Natalie asks Bananas if he's going to pursue things with Angela when they get home.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to be super honest with you. There were a lot of scenes in this episode where I was like, nope, not here for it. And this was
Okay,
one of those scenes. I was just like, what? Like, that first Redemption House scene with Kyle and Brad and whatever, when they're talking about what's their reaction going to be if Nelson comes to the Redemption House, I'm like, I don't really care about that. Then the next scene right after that, and I noticed you skipped it, so I'm guessing that you don't care about it either, which I approve of, right? But ranking just above or just below, I guess whichever way we're doing the power rankings, the Natalie and Johnny talking about Angela, I'm just like, I'm not falling for this. Like, why do you care? Why is this even an issue? Why is this a thing, right? Like, Johnny and Natalie were barely anything that we took seriously to begin with, right? And then even if you were taking it seriously, we know that Natalie and Johnny weren't something to take seriously because this whole Kaylee and Natalie and outing Natalie and, you know, is Natalie friends with Johnny? And she said she was over it. She just got over it for no reason a week ago. Like, there just seems to be so many conflicting narratives involving Johnny and Natalie, and I don't care about any of them. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was just my opinion. I was just like, I don't care. The only thing I care about is like, oh, her chin still looks fucked up.
And she has a really nasty scab on her shoulder, right? Like, she took a beating in that competition, which in fairness was like in real life like 4 days ago. So like, she's not Wolverine. It makes sense that she still has these scabs. But I mean, it's all just Chekhov's gun, right? Like, they're all just setting up later conflict for us.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what's going on. If it's like it's a writing phrase. Like, if you're gonna mention a gun in the first act, someone's gonna fire it in the third act, right?
No. I got you. No, I know what you mean. I'm just like, I still don't care. Like, it's just like, they're just talking about, and it doesn't matter, right? And you're right, because obviously this scene comes up again. Like, they're trying to make you care as this episode goes along, and each and every time, I guess this will be the theme as we go along, right? I don't want to save too much of my distaste of this whole, I don't even want to call it fake relationship, right? Fake friendship, whatever they're doing. I don't want to give too much of it away because obviously it comes up again in this episode. But you know what I mean? I was just like, get out of here with this.
Well, the other thing is that, to the best of our knowledge, Natalie has a girlfriend at home.
Yes.
Like, that, in my mind, in this scene, like, what's she getting jealous over? Like, she's got someone back home. And similarly, Angela has someone back home, and maybe Angela was gonna go back home and dump her guy for Johnny Bananas, but
sure,
maybe. But I had a point. Someone made this point to me about Natalie, and it's interesting, and I don't know when we're gonna get a chance to talk about Natalie like this. So I'm gonna shoot my shot here, if that's all right. Mm-hmm. Natalie comes from, she was a beauty pageant queen before she got into cheerleading, right?
Okay.
And it's been pointed out to me that the thing about beauty pageants is that you're always told what to say. Like, you have your team of experts, your hair person, your makeup person, and so on. And then you are prepped for all those questions. And, sometimes beauty pageant queens get ripped on for the ineloquent way of articulating themselves because they get, like, flustered in the moment.
Yeah.
But it means that because you get into the beauty pageant scene when, like, you're a young teenager until, like, your mid-20s, you don't have a lot of authentic conversations because you're always being told, like, your conversational decisions are already made for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, for sure.
And I think that's where a lot of Natalie's awkwardness comes from. And why people in the house complain that she's false. Because she doesn't know how to be real. Like, if you compare her to someone like Marie, or someone like Shane, or someone like Cam, who are, like, like scorchingly real all the time, like so real that it's hard to take.
Yeah, like Natalie just always seems like she's on, right?
Yes.
Like it's a character, whichever
But
character kind of fits the scene of the moment.
and she's kind of been trained to be that way, and like she's, I think, like figuring out how to not be that way, but like it's a process for her because she's like out of the system, I guess, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
So like I think that like I don't think it's that she has feelings for Johnny Bananas, but I do think she is. The reason why she was asking about Angela is because she feels like she got played last season by Johnny Bananas.
Okay.
And she's asking about Angela because if he's actually going to try to follow up with Angela in the real world, it means she got less played.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I just think that like her and Johnny Bananas were trying to play all of us last year, right? And
Yes.
that made me not care. Or last season, sorry. And that made me not care about, like, you know, like with all the allegations, and for people who might not remember, you know, we had Jemmy on, we had Marie on, we had people on from that season, and they confirmed what we were talking about, right? Like Jemmy, I think, might have been the first one on board, kind of co-signing the whole fake relationship, setting up us weekly photo shoots, like all this stuff, right? So we know, or we, you know, just watching it, it seemed kind of phony and all contrived, right? You had Natalie coming off Big Brother, which is obviously a rating smash, and jumping over to the challenge, and then Johnny Bananas being the quote-unquote, probably the self-proclaimed king of the challenge, right? And so their little relationship, fake relationship, turned into this whole narrative and storyline that I didn't care about. And then now we're still getting it, right? After a whole fake fight, a fake breakup, fake being angry that someone else was doing something with someone else, and then now we're here and it's still a thing. I'm like, no, get out of here.
In hindsight, if given that I gather Natalie was at the time of like the quasi dating Bananas, I gather that she was wrestling with her own sexual orientation. In hindsight, it's interesting that like obviously it sort of confirms that that was just a showmance, like that was all just a fake relationship. But it also gives me more sympathy that maybe she was like struggling to figure out who she was.
No, I think it was all a ploy.
Oh, so cynical, young Sheldon.
Yeah, it was all a ploy. Because remember, she's coming from Big Brother where she did the same thing, right? She was in a fake pretend relationship for the entire season on Big Brother as well. And, yeah, manipulated James, who was, you know, just a nice guy. Just a good guy. Just calm and cool, chill guy. And he was manipulated into thinking that maybe she actually liked him. Super weird. But, anyways, yeah.
But then we have yet another club scene. And we've had a lot of club scenes this season, eh? Like a lot. Like I feel like more than average.
Yeah, but not... I feel like it's in short doses, right? And I feel like nothing has really transpired during these club scenes.
Yeah, well, I think they're just trying to get them out of the house so they don't go stir crazy.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally.
But two things arise from this club scene. The first is that Ashley and Sylvia tell Marie that they're voting for Bananas and that the Lavender ladies and Young Bucks are going to shoot their shot. And Sylvia confirms that in confessional. Like, they're not playing with Marie. Shane joins in the conversation, and they all ask Marie to keep it quiet and so that they can, like, move without Johnny Bananas flipping out, which is smart.
And also catch them by surprise on some level, right?
Yeah. At the same time, Johnny is getting jealous because Natalie is talking to Nelson and Hunter at the bar. And then back at the house, Banana goes on this rant to Kara about it. And I gotta say, this is not a good look for your man Johnny. Like, I think it's acting, but also, like, Nelson and Hunter and and Natalie, they're dancing as friends would dance. Like, it's very PG.
Yeah.
Didn't you think? Like, I didn't really think that there was anything scandalous going on.
So I'm going to go with this being 95% acting by Johnny Bananas, and I'm going to leave a 5% chance. What did I say, 90 or 95? I don't remember what I
You
just
said 95.
95, okay, cool. I'm going to go with a 95% chance that Johnny Bananas is acting, and I'm going to leave a 5% chance that maybe he's worried, and he's playing up the relationship angle to cover the fact that he's worried about the voting angle, right? And which way votes could possibly go this week and going forward, right? Like, can he 100% count on Natalie and Paulie's votes on that side of the house with Marie and Cara? You know, I'm giving a 5% chance that maybe he's worried about that. But the fact that he's sitting down with Cara, who is another challenge vet, you know, that kind of makes me think, okay, this is kind of set up. The way that the scene was edited in terms of having these cutaways to Natalie, like, is she listening? Could you hear this conversation? What's going on?
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Cuts. You're not really seeing her and Nelson and Hunter really do anything, right? Like, you're barely even seeing them have actual conversations. That just kind of led me to believe that this was obviously way more played up. And very quickly, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't care about any of this again. Like, what? Let's move this along.
Well, and like even the scenes, maybe we're missing something. Like maybe something was cut out. Maybe she's been making flirtatious comments with them. All that, like the cameras just didn't catch, but Johnny Bananas saw. But like what we saw was her just kind of dancing like goofy. Like it wasn't sexual dancing. It wasn't intimate. It was just like how you would dance with friends, sort of making fun of a song. You know what I mean?
But he also has no reason to care, and she has no reason to care about if he's gonna talk to Angela. Like, this is so dumb, right? Like, that's what made this whole thing dumb. And I'm saying dumb from a viewer perspective, as if I flip and put the producer hat on, obviously I know they're just making an episode, right? Like, you're filling time with an episode, and you're like, hey, play this up a little so that we have a storyline to fill up one episode before we really get to the goods to wrap up the season. I totally get it, right? You needed a little extra beef to fill this up, because you have to remember they weren't expecting that they were going to kick off Corey and Devin, right? Like, we weren't expecting that to happen. So that's a whole other storyline or narrative or episode with an elimination probably, or maybe it was going to be an extra purge, but just that whole drama of having Corey and Devin back in the house, that probably was going to give you a little bit more to choose from in terms of putting together an episode. So with those guys gone, and there's no real mention of that in this episode, right?
No.
So that's also kind of weird, I found. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're taking out this huge hole. You got to fill it with something. You got to fill up the time, and here we are.
So then we get to the voting. No one votes for TJ, as Johnny Bananas had suggested off the top of the episode.
True.
But the Lavender Ladies and the Young Buck Alliance vote for Bananas and Tony. Marie tells Cara in the voting booth about the other side's plan. And Shane and Nelson are on the same page, but they have a moment of friction, and it leads to afterwards Shane and Nelson having like a sit down to like work out their relationship issues. And Shane tells Nelson he's close to his breaking point psychologically, and that Nelson needs to not yell at him, and Nelson apologizes. And Shane says, "You have to treat me like I'm your girlfriend, only I'm your boyfriend," which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, it was a weird scene, but it was also one of those things where I was just curious about the fact that if you're Shane and Nelson, right? Like, or especially if you're Shane normally messes up by this point of the season, right? And gets himself kicked out. So he's probably really rattled because he can sense the final getting near.
Yes.
And he doesn't know how to react to that. Because again, he's normally self-destructed by now in the season of the challenge. So that's all that's going on. And then add in just the normal stuff that we talk about all the time, right? Like how difficult it is to live in a house like this, you know, under these circumstances for that long. obviously it's going to start getting to you. You're doing the exact same things every day. There's not much for you to go out and do, right? So it's understandable.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to put this gently. I don't think that this life is for everyone. Like,
No, of course not.
I think Shane is on the border of people who like this kind of stress is not good for, and like we've seen it. Like he has his freakouts, and I mean he said it himself. He's at his breaking point, and really, he doesn't have that big a target on his back at this point, right? Like at this point, he knows that Johnny and Tony are going in. So like he's not even on the chopping block and he's stressing. Like that is a hard way to live if you're under that much stress all the time.
So break this down for me, right? So there's Joss and Sylvia, right?
Yes.
There's Hunter and Ashley.
Yes.
There's Nelson and Shane,
Yes.
right? So that's 3 votes.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is on that side? That's it.
Yeah,
Right?
that's it.
So then if you're the other side of the house and Paulie and Natalie win and they have 2 votes,
Mm-hmm.
then there's Johnny's vote.
Mm-hmm.
That would be 3. And then there's Marie and Cara.
Yeah.
Isn't that 4 votes?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So here's the thing that I didn't understand at all that made absolutely no sense to me. Bare minimum, even if Marie and Cara aren't on that side, bare minimum, Johnny and Paulie and Natalie never talked about who they'd be putting in. Like this makes no sense to me. That's the part that was just like completely odd. I don't know what kind of strategy was being used by the other side of the house. Like, even if you're Natalie and Paulie, like, why, do you know what I mean? And you're going to put, like, wouldn't you just talk to them to at least, we're going to use our 2 votes on blank. We need at least one of you to vote for them because at least then it'll be a tie. The tie will come down to us. Like, it just made no sense. I'm super confused. I don't understand how they messed this up, right? Like, it seems pretty straightforward, no?
Yeah, and that was my point earlier. Like, why didn't they all, like, why didn't the banana side of the house figure their shit out? Because they could have, with the power vote, it makes the difference. And I really think the thinking was Bananas and Tony thought that no one would vote them in, so they didn't feel the need to defend themselves.
Or rally troops or try to garner votes. They're too
Yeah.
confident. Like, I mean, even if that is the case, right? And you're not worried about Bananas and Tony, right? People voting for them. If you had the power vote, don't you want to ensure that whoever you're voting for ends up going in? Like, that's the part that didn't make sense to me. And then it just comes down to, again, I guess the strategy that I said earlier, right? The 2 sides of it. So instead of maybe Marie and Cara did know, right? And they were supposed to vote with, right? Because they ended up voting for Shane and Nelson, right?
Yeah.
Is that how that went?
Yeah.
So who did the power vote go to? Did we see that? I don't even remember.
I don't remember. I didn't note it down.
But I'm saying, like, it just made no sense. And so unless Cara and Marie were just that shook, right, and didn't want to go against anyone, right, and wanted to avoid it, so that maybe they knew who everyone was voting for, and they just decided we're just going to burn our vote, so we're not going in the elimination at all. I mean, it was just weird to me. The way that this played out, which I think that's it, right? I think at the end of the day, Marie and Cara were just like, we're avoiding this elimination altogether.
Yeah.
And we want no smoke at all. Which, if that's the case...
smart.
Yes, I mean, it's one way to go at it. And if they realize... Because do you think that Sylvia or the Lavender Lady crew, do you think that they fully let them know, like, hey, we want you guys around because we want to go against you in the finals? Do you think they let them know that? Gave them that far, like made them feel that comfortable?
No, I don't think they went that far. I think they just said we need to get rid of Johnny.
Okay. Okay. So it's still interesting to me, right? Because then I don't get it. Like, what happened doesn't make sense. And I think that if you're bare minimum, and I know we talked about it, avoid eliminations. Avoid eliminations. That's the best way to go about it, right? But you're Paulie and Natalie. You're putting in Joss and Sylvia, right? That's who they gave the power votes to. If you're Bananas and whoever, that's who they ended up picking to go against anyways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, I don't know.
I
It comes
think
down to they didn't want to be on the voting side because they didn't want to go in against anyone. And I think Bananas didn't want to go in either. So that's why they all were just like, okay, we're burning votes essentially. And we think that they're going to fight it out on their side, which is completely dumb.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the thinking was, so, like, in the situation you're describing, like, power vote, Tony and Bananas, Cara Maria and Marie vote. Suddenly, they're, like, two of their three pieces of the alliance are exposed.
Yeah.
And if that puts the balance of power in Joss and Sylvia's hands to take
go
out
against
one of them.
Well, they're gonna pick Marie. If they're Marie and if you're Marie and Cara, right? The thought process is, if we do this, obviously these teams are gonna pick us instead of picking Bananas and Tony. So they don't want to go against. They're gonna rather go against us than go against Bananas and Tony. If we all vote on the same side,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? So I can kind of see, and I'm agreeing with you because I know you said this. That's why Marie and Cara probably didn't do that. But again, if I'm Johnny, right?
Yeah, why
Now
wouldn't
you're basically confirming, unless you get Marie and Cara to vote with you, you're confirming that you're going in against someone. And I think they didn't do that because they weren't willing to say, yo, we're going in for sure and taking out a team. Meanwhile, the Lavender crew was like, no, this is who we want out, and we're confident in taking that team out, or we're at least, as you said, willing to shoot our shot and try and take this team out. And I just think that was a stronger strategy. That's what I've been saying the whole season. You're better off being confident in yourself and willing to take out the team that you want eliminated, instead of trying to sit back and, like, hope that it works out some other way. No, take it into your own hands. That's my opinion.
No, I'm with you. There were some interesting comments, though. First of all, in confessional, Cara says that she's impressed with Marie's politics and that, like, Marie is proving her worth. And I found this odd, but in confessional, Banana says Shane and Nelson engineered this. Like, that they were the ones that, like, rallied the troops to get Bananas and Tony in. It's interesting that he sees Shane and Nelson as the masterminds of that operation, because that's not my impression. Is it yours?
I don't know. I really don't know, like, who started it or who's the. I think he's more mad because Shane is the most vocal. Nelson, they're the loudest ones in the room, always screaming. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what it is. And so Johnny Bananas is so focused on the loudest person in the room instead of realizing that it's not about the loudest person in the room all the time, right?
I mean, Marie told us that Sylvia was really, like, sort of the driving force behind that alliance.
Well, it's true, because if you think about it, Johnny did kind of change his tune, right? In terms of saying Sylvia has Josh's balls in her purse and blah, blah,
Which
blah,
was
blah.
So fucking stupid. Like,
he's being salty at that point, right?
Yeah, he was being salty at that point, but, like, Joss is just being a good teammate with Sylvia. Like, if you're in Joss's shoes, why would you fight Sylvia on this? Like, why would you be like, hey, you've got this super strong alliance? Fuck that. Like, let's do our own thing, right? Like,
yeah.
If you're Joss and, like, you're the last British person in the room, and, like, you're also, like, the natural alliance for him is Kyle and Kaylee, who I would not want to be allied with because they're all over the place. Like, why wouldn't you, like, just be like, yeah, Sylvia, sure. Like, do your thing. I'm gonna, like, go hook up with Amanda and, like, stay out of trouble and, like, keep the kitchen clean. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Like,
no, totally makes sense. And I totally, see where Joss is coming from. I don't knock Joss for that at all. I just think it's an interesting thing, right? Like, this whole episode was just all about the different strategies, which I think is a lot of the reason why we love the challenge and why we do a podcast, because we're, like, literally talking this out on air in terms of what the strategy should have been, right? And it's super interesting, the mentalities. And I think you're right. And Johnny told us that you're right, John, because you mentioned Johnny and Tony had that sense of security, right? That no one was going to come at them. And you mentioned the confessionals, and what's one of the things Johnny said in the confessional? He messed up the Omar Little line, right? You come at the king, you best not miss.
Yeah.
Right? And shout out to the Wire fans. I know as in 2018, some of the kids listening to this might be like, what's the Wire? Who's Omar Little?
Go back and watch The Wire.
Omar Little just might be one of the most gangster motherfuckers in the history of television. But, Johnny dropping that line, or some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm tired, people. I'm sorry. I apologize. But Johnny Bananas dropping some form of that line in the confessional, I think it's him agreeing with you, right? It's him telling you that you're right, John, in the sense that he's the king. He didn't think that anyone had the balls to go at them. And now, here we go.
I also have to say, so, like, TJ brings Bananas and Tony down. They, like, have a little conference to decide who to bring in. Tony points out that it's a water competition, and, like, you don't want to put Shane in water because Shane, outside of Wes, Shane is the best swimmer, aquatic person. Tony struggles with trying to call Shane a merman, which was hilarious. He's like a human mermaid, but mermaids are human, which they're not. They're half human, and he got all tripped up. It was funny. But when Bananas and Tony, like, decide to announce that they're going with Joss and Sylvia, I fucking hate how Bananas always has a goddamn speech. Like, I hate that he can never just say, like, Joss and Sylvia, come on down. Like, it's always got to be whatever, like, that we could vote all these people in, but, they've said our name the most, so we're, like, he can never just say, like, straightforward.
Because he's getting his producer on, right? He's getting his producer on while also being in the show. He's standing there in that moment thinking, oh, this can be a guaranteed Johnny Bananas clip in the episode, so here we go. Yeah. My time to shine.
So the competition is called Don't Trip Me Up, and basically they get into two giant vats of water, and they have these little cards that float, that are attached to these ropes that are all, like, crisscrossing the vat, and then floating in the middle is, like, a little platform that has a pole on it, and after one member of the team goes and gets all of the cards, they have to try to assemble a tower that has to be 3 feet high and has to hold for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
This is not an easy competition. It sounds simple, but it was not easy. And I will say, this is what I had spoiled for me by Twitter, was that I knew who won.
Oh, so, yeah, that's a terrible spoiler, actually. I don't know how I didn't get it spoiled, because I was on Twitter the entire night doing Raptor shit, and then, like, as I was uploading, I finished editing, and normally, a little peek behind the curtain to the listeners, normally we record the podcast in the morning, like Wednesday mornings, and I'll wake up and watch the episode in the morning before we record.
Which is what I did today.
For sure. But last night, as I wrapped up as I finished the Raptors podcast, like post-game show, and I finished editing and I was uploading the video, I was like, oh, this is going to take a while. Let me just watch the challenge now while I'm waiting for this to upload. So I went back to Twitter, and I was kind of like, oh, wait, I probably shouldn't do that in case there's something there that's going to be ruined, right? So I kind of, like, did the scroll, but the not the full on scroll, so you're not paying attention to what you're scrolling past. You know what I mean? And yeah, nothing was ruined for me. So I was kind of, I didn't know who was gonna win. I had no idea. And the way that they cut it together, I couldn't really tell. Normally there's a tell when you can be like, wait a second, they're trying to make us think this team's gonna win, so that team's gonna win. Like, there was none of that. Like, I really couldn't tell right down to the wire who was gonna win that challenge. And it was such a huge fluke to me, right? Like, I thought it was, like, I don't know what the best strategy was in terms of building it. Obviously, you're trying to stay still in this bucket of water, but it's freezing cold because if now you're shaking, and as much as you're shivering and shaking, now you're making waves within it, and that's moving the platform. Like, it seemed really hard, and you could see both teams getting super frustrated, right?
Yeah. Well, Johnny Bananas was really losing his shit. Like, he was flipping out.
Yeah.
He like, yelled at TJ, because TJ was like, come on, like, let's get it. There's $1 million on the line, and, like, does Johnny have debts? Because he was stressing.
It was one of those things where, you almost, and I know this is me playing hindsight 1,000%, right? So I'm not saying that they should have done this or they should have done that, because it's easier to say after the fact when they lost, right? And when you're picking who you're going against, you have an idea or you have a theory on what the actual event is, right? What the elimination is, but you don't really know, right?
No.
So, hey, first instinct, we know Shane's good in water, so we're not going to go there. I totally understand that, right?
Yes.
But then when you actually see the challenge, it doesn't really matter that much, like how good you are in water. To me, the thing that mattered the most, and again, they wouldn't have known this because they didn't know what the challenge was going to be, but the thing that mattered the most was how your team worked together.
And how you handle stress.
For sure, but I don't think that Joss and Sylvia handled stress that much better. I just think the way that their team worked in terms of Joss being like, okay, whatever, like him being willing to just step back, him being willing to just listen to everyone just rip him, because even Shane was yelling at him while they were in the middle of it, right? But his ability to just step back and be like, you know what, I'll let Sylvia do her thing, I'll just support her. Whatever she needs, I'm going to do. She doesn't want me to touch this or do that. Cool, I'm going to stop. Right? Like, to me, that was way more key. Right? What your team dynamic was. Right? Because if it was Shane and Nelson, can't you just see them flipping out on each other during this whole entire thing? Right? And not even coming close to being able to build this? Do you know what I mean? And so Shane might have been great in water and they might have gotten all the pieces faster, but I feel like they would have worked so poorly with each other that there's no chance they would have built that on the platform. Same with who works even worse together, Hunter and Ashley, right?
Yes.
They would have been a complete gong show trying to build that tower up to 3 feet, right? Like, I bet you could have left Hunter and Ashley there all night, and they would not have figured out how to build that tower and have it stay there for 3 seconds or whatever the length of time was. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, they would have. Hunter and Ashley would have fallen apart, and I agree. Given Shane's temperament, I mean, Shane was losing his mind as a bystander. Like,
exactly.
He would not have done well if he was actually in the competition himself.
Totally true. So true. And, obviously, again, I know this is all hindsight. Tony and Bananas didn't know what the actual challenge was. Obviously, they'd lost, so it's so easy to say, trust me, people, I know, don't tweet at me and be like, oh, it's easy, hindsight, whatever. I get it. I understand. I'm just bringing up ulterior endings, right? Or what would have been more entertaining or funnier to see happen, right? Because Hunter and Ashley, I think, screaming at each other would have been so funny.
Yes. Oh, my God. So Joss and Sylvia do it. They win. I think it was the camera angle, but it didn't look higher than the pole to me.
Yeah,
but
the camera angle kind of had me like, oh, wait a second. I also wonder, too, if it just took so long that eventually, like, let's say, I don't know what the time was that the thing had to be standing for, but would you put it past there just being a quick count if this was taking forever? Do you know what I mean? Like the old, like the shady WWF referees from back in the day. The
I love you for that.
Right?
I will say there was one of the many towers that they built that lasted 2 seconds. That was definitely like high enough.
Yeah.
So they were almost there.
One thing I'll say too, though, John, I'll give Johnny and Tony credit for how they handled the loss. Like in their confessional, right directly after they lose, they're both just kind of like laughing about it, right? Because it was such a random challenge that anyone could win that like there's no rhyme or reason to it at the end of the day, right? Like I know I just went through all these like phony scenarios of what could have or should have and would have happened, but they wouldn't have known that, right? And I'm giving them credit for their reaction. Like it's not like they were super pissed. It's not like they were super rattled. It's not like they were like talking shit to the other side. And also credit, it's not like Joss and Sylvia were talking that shit to them either, right? Like I think everyone knew like this was just a really fucked up challenge. Yeah.
You know what? I thought it was a good challenge. Like I thought it was interesting and like it was a legitimate. It would have been legitimately difficult, and any team would have been challenged by it.
Which follows the theme of this entire season, right? Because the other subplot that we've been talking about in terms of, the theme of this episode, as I've been saying, is do you want the smoke of going into the elimination or do you want to avoid the elimination, right? But the other thing is, the biggest thing to me anyways, when you watch and if you go back to all of these eliminations, all of the challenges have been super random, right?
Yes.
Like, you think that, hey, this team is super strong, but it doesn't matter because, like, who can build basically a Jenga puzzle, right? Like, you might think Tony and Bananas are the strongest team or whatever, but that doesn't matter when you're trying to build a Jenga puzzle in a pool of water, right? So all of these things, all of these eliminations, it's almost like you should shoot your shot and take out the big boy teams because there's a better chance that they'll struggle at something like that as opposed to trying to take them out in a final, right? And that's kind of been the thing where maybe it took this far along in the game, but the Lavender Lady crew realized, hey, we'll take our chance in whatever the random challenge is as opposed to letting these guys stick around. And if you go back to, if you just watch what happened to Paulie and Natalie, how did they get back in the game? It was a completely random, right, elimination where, should that team be able to beat Brad and Kyle? No, of course not. But again, a super random elimination and anything can happen. So those are my two takeaways there. Random eliminations that equalize, the strength of what you think the top tier teams are. And also, do you want the smoke of an elimination or don't you want the smoke of an elimination? I can't even say that. I'm like, I haven't been talking and losing my voice on a Raptors back-to-back post-game shows, and then I'm doing the challenge and I'm half drunk, tired in the morning. I'm okay.
You're working too hard. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah, I do also have a full-time job in between all of those things. Yes, that is a thing.
You know what? Maybe because it's Halloween, you've been possessed by a ghost. Maybe that's what's going on.
I can't wait to come home after work today and just go to sleep, to be honest.
I'm going to suggest that we leave the two Redemption House scenes and put them together and just skip to the Purge Challenge. Talk about the Purge Challenge and then we'll wrap up with all the Redemption House nonsense. How's that sound to you?
Sounds like a plan. Cool.
Okay. So, Purge Challenge. It's a height challenge. They've got this rotating pipe. I don't know why that's the word that came to mind. Cylinder, I guess.
Jeez.
And the way it works is you've got one of your partners has to take a flag and sort of like walk across this spinning cylinder, and your teammate has to meet you on the cylinder, take the flag from you, and then like hop back on the platform and put the flag away. This looks, well, I should say, I thought it looked hard, but then Hunter got out there and he got 6 flags with Ashley, like off the top.
Well,
Like
Hunter's super athletic and super agile, right? Like I wasn't really that surprised that Hunter was able to do, like he made it look that easy because Hunter is a good competitor in a lot of different challenges, right?
Yeah.
Like he's super athletic, he's super agile, we know that, but also he doesn't really flip out, right? Heights aren't really a big deal to him, whereas someone else who is super athletic, like I think Nelson and Shane are both athletic guys, but I think the height kind of rattles them, right? And that throws you off. So
that's a good point.
Another great challenge, you know, like I thought it was a super cool challenge that involved heights, but it wasn't just, hey, you guys are dangling above water. Like there was strategy to it, right? Like, you know, because wasn't it called Meet Me in the Middle? Is that what it was called? Or did I make that up?
That's what another one was
Oh,
called.
sorry, Heads Will Roll. I made that up. Meet Me in the Middle was probably the name of something else, right?
It was.
But sorry, I said that because the way that they're explaining it, they made it seem as if your partner would have to meet you in the middle, and then you'd both have to go back to your sides, right? And to get the flag from one end to the next. So it appeared as if that would have to be it, but the strategy obviously turned into, and I think after watching Hunter do it first, the strategy turned into, okay, well, who do you think would be better at running across? Well, make that person do all the work, and then the second person, you just hop on to get the flag, and that's it.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. I mean, except if you're who messed that up?
Sylvia messed it up, where she only put one foot down. You had to have both feet on the cylinder.
Well, Sylvia and Marie and I don't even know what Marie did, and they didn't show a replay, but it was super weird to me.
Well, so we already described that Joss and Sylvia, they messed up because Sylvia only got, like, Joss got a flag to her. Sylvia only got one foot down, though, so it didn't count. And then, like, hearing that because he heard TJ, like, shouting at Sylvia, I think threw Joss's concentration off, and he fell off.
Yeah.
And at this point, it was crucial because Nelson fell off, like, immediately. Like, Nelson blew it, which, because it's a Purge challenge, basically guaranteed that Shane and Nelson were going home or going to the Redemption House, as long as Joss, as long as anyone did even slightly better. Like, you just needed one flag to beat them.
Well, it wasn't even that, right? It came down to who made it further across, right? So the fact that Nelson only got halfway across, or not even halfway across before he fell, it came down to how far across did Joss make it, how far across did Cara Maria make it. And it was funny because Cara and Marie were the last team to go, and you know, it was kind of like, oh no, how far is she going to make it? How far is she going to make it? And she did a really good job, right? Cara Maria did a good job getting across, and then Marie just kind of like fell. But, you know, I don't want to give credit to these two, but Pauly and Natalie did a really good job, right? Like Pauly, like if Hunter made it look easy, then, you know, Pauly was like LeBron. You know what I mean? Like it was, I know that sounds ridiculous, but Pauly just looked like he could have kept going over and over again, right? Like he had no trouble at all doing that. What'd they finish with? 8 flags, I think it was?
Pauly fell at one point, but recovered.
Yeah.
Like, most people, they would lose their footing, and they would stumble and stumble and stumble, and they would grab the cylinder, and it would rotate, and they would drop off. But he fell, like, he tripped up. I mean, we didn't include that there were sort of, like, barriers that they also had to, like, obstacles to jump over. He sort of tripped on one of those, but was agile enough, nimble enough to get back on his feet and finish running across. Like, the fact, like, that's crazy. Fun. That was very impressive. And I don't like Pauly. And, I mean, I like Natalie more, but I don't like Pauly. But that was super impressive. Like, that was incredible.
Yeah, no, it was super cool.
Hunter just, like, goes full Southerner and says that he's as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. He sounded like He sounded like Rogue on the X-Men cartoon from the 90s, just like a southern stereotype. It was super funny to me as a smug Canadian. we don't have phrases like that.
Yeah, I've never heard that one before, and I had to rewind that and be like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, it makes sense if you had a long tail and you were in a room full of rocking chairs.
I get it. I understand.
I'd be nervous too. It's just it doesn't like roll off the tongue.
I understand the saying. I get what it means.
No, I know. I'm not saying that you don't understand it. I'm just saying that like it's such a convoluted way of just saying like, "Yo, I'm nervous as fuck." Like,
yeah. No, for sure.
Which is, I think, I mean, maybe that's why he's on television and we're not, because we don't have those turns of phrase at our disposal. But man,
true. So yeah, good job by them.
You do not hear that north of the 49th parallel. I'll tell you that much.
No. Yeah. So good job by Paulie and Natalie. They end up winning the challenge, and Shane and Nelson lose. They come in last and are sent right to the Redemption House. But before we get to that Redemption House shit, I gotta say, I don't know if it's because I don't like Paulie and Natalie. You know, like, I don't know if, like, this was a team that I was enjoying for, if I'd be rooting for them more. But I'm salty over the fact that, like, they should have been eliminated a long time ago.
Yes.
I'm not cool with the fact that, as I look at who's left, you have Hunter and Ashley, who are mercenaries that came in, like, halfway through the game. You have Paulie and Natalie, who have been chilling in the Redemption House for the majority of the game. Like, that's just not fair. If you're Sylvia and Joss, that's not fair. If you're Marie and Cara, that's not fair. If you're Shane and Nelson, that's not fair, right? Like, it's just super weird to me, but seeing them, you know, one thing, the mercenaries are one thing, I get it, like, that's a huge advantage, but the fact that they lost eliminations, what, twice?
Twice.
And then came back, won, and then now you're winning challenges again, like, I don't know, that doesn't sit well with me.
I am in 100% agreement with you. I'm so on board with that. And don't forget, like, Devin and Corey could have been in there too, right?
Exactly,
like,
right? If they don't self-destruct, yeah.
If they don't, well, if Corey doesn't self-destruct,
true.
Like, they could have been in there as well. I think it's particularly galling, just as you said, I'm just echoing you, but it's particularly galling that Paulie and Natalie are still in there after they lost 2 elimination challenges.
Yeah.
Like, that's bullshit. And, you know...
Agreed.
It's bullshit. Anyway, the Redemption House. So, when Johnny...
So, Johnny comes in, and Johnny right away decides that he's going to try to stir up some trouble. He's going to tell Kaylee that Natalie and Nelson were hanging out, and I think he says, like, cuddling or... like hanging out in bed together or something.
They
I think
shared
that's
a bed.
As far as he took it. Yeah. And first, obviously, for those who don't remember, Kaylee and Natalie don't see eye to eye. They had their whole drama where Kaylee outed her on social media. They tried to have a make up. I almost said make out. They almost had a make-up session in the Redemption House, but then that quickly soured, where they were just screaming at each other again. So they do not like each other. So if you're Kaylee hearing that Nelson is now, you know, cozying up to your arch nemesis, that might not be something that you want to hear. But she takes it kind of, like, she doesn't really want to believe it because she's considering the source and it's Johnny Bananas. And chances are he's being a shit disturber, right? But there is part of her that's like, oh no, could this be true? Now, as everyone's kind of, you know, whispering and murmuring around the house, what appears to be the next day, which obviously we have no sense of time, but who magically ends up being the next person to come into the house? Nelson.
I have to say, I loved the timing of, like, Kaylee was literally talking about it with Cam. And,
which makes me suspicious, but anyways.
And was stressing it when Nelson literally walks in.
Yeah.
And...
no, for sure, that's a thing. And we end up with this cliffhanger, and I'm going to be honest, like, I didn't care about this cliffhanger at all.
Well, no. I mean, these B plots and Johnny Bananas pettiness, like I'm not into it. And
And
like
like
it's a
Nelson's gonna say no,
continuation.
it didn't happen. But Nelson's gonna say no, it didn't happen. She's gonna be like, "See, Johnny, you're a liar." Nelson's then gonna yell at Johnny. Johnny's then gonna yell back, and then see.
Well, and it's just the continuation of the drama from last season, right? Because Johnny and Kaylee made out, and then he became involved with Natalie, and then like it's just more, and I'm not interested in it. But I do have to say something. I thought that what Johnny was saying was totally made up. Like I thought he was just pulling shit out of his ass, just to stir the pot, right? Like just Johnny being Johnny.
Yeah.
And then Tony sort of backed him up on it. I was like, oh, maybe Tony's playing along. But when Nelson came in, just his body language and like how he reacted, I kind of think there's something to what Johnny was saying. Like I kind
I
of
just
think
think
there's some
Nelson's
truth to
super
it.
awkward. To be honest, what I think happened, I think that Nelson's just super awkward, and he walked into. It's almost like he walked into the middle of a scene, and by scene I mean scripted scene. That's not
Yes.
really scripted, if you know what I'm saying. And he
Yeah.
didn't really know how to react. He just kind of like, wait, what? So what did Johnny say? Wait, what did he? Well, hold on. Who's saying what? What? And he was more thrown off by that because in his mind, at that point, he realizes, oh, this could be a thing that's like a bit, that's like a scene that's gonna end up in the show, and I could like play along with this and kind of amp it up a little. You know, like, is this a thing where now I can get hype and yell at Johnny? Like, he's trying to figure out what's going on because literally it's right as he walks into the house. So
Yeah.
to me, it kind of seemed like he walked into the middle of like a scripted scene that he didn't realize was going on at all. He thought it'd just be like, "Hey, everyone, how's it going?" And
It's just
instead, there's like
his-
this whole thing going down.
It's just his body language. Like the way he came in to the room was sort of like bashful. Like if I were in his shoes, I would have come in and been like, "Hey, it sucks I'm here, but it's great to see you." Like he would have come in with a different energy, but he sort of just like slid into the room.
Yeah.
And then like when all this is exploding, like his hands are stuffed into his pockets, he's wearing sunglasses. And I was just like, like if
That's what I'm saying.
if-
No, I think he just didn't know they were rolling. Like, I'm being serious. Like, he walked into a scene and he didn't know, like it was like, okay, action, go. And Nelson's kind of like, wait, what's my line? Like, I feel like that's kind
Who
of
is
what
this?
was going on.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was an element of it, but I also think that, like, I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Maybe Sheldon, maybe he's not that bright. Maybe that's, I don't know. But it just, like, wouldn't, as you assess the situation, don't you think you'd be like, oh, shit, like, this is about to, like, shit's popping off and I'm in the center of the storm. Like, wouldn't you
For
take
sure.
off your sunglasses and be like, what the fuck are you talking? Like,
But
he
that's what I'm
doesn't
saying.
like
That's where
deny
I think
it.
two things are going on, right? Like, you have the real life, and then you have the show within the show, right? And he's like, oh, I was trying to walk in like the cool guy to make a show,
Yeah,
but now like there's another show going on that I'm not aware of. Wait, what's happening? And he's caught in the middle.
I did love, however, um, I loved when Kyle went to get Johnny.
Yeah.
When he was like, "Yo, Nelson's here! Like, this is gonna be great." I like that a lot.
That was funny.
And yeah, we're definitely gonna start off the next episode of the challenge with a big argument between all these combustible elements.
Well, I hope
And-
it goes by quickly because the tease for next week's challenge, there's 2 eliminations and a challenge
Yes.
on next week's episode. So, yeah, get over this whole... I don't even care. To be honest, I might just fast forward through the Nelson yelling at Johnny Bananas and them yelling at each other. I might just fast forward through that, to be honest.
That's fair. I wouldn't blame you.
I won't really do that because we got to talk about it on the podcast.
Yes,
but, you know.
that's true. I do know what you mean. I know that you're dedicated to the craft. I know that you're in this.
Yes. Yes. Very
what
true.
what was your line of the episode?
So I know Hunter did have a pretty cool line, and that did like make me laugh, and I thought that was kind of funny. I did find it funny that Sylvia, while shivering in the water, described herself as being a beautiful bronzed goddess, which I just thought was a very that's a very confident way to describe oneself. But also I wasn't really I'm not in a position where I'm going to disagree with her either.
No.
So I thought that was pretty funny. But anytime you quote The Wire, I'm in. So Johnny Bananas quoting Omar Little with one of my favorite lines ever. You come at the king, you best not miss. I'm here for that. So that's always going to get my line of the episode.
I loved Tony's bit about Shane being a human mermaid. And like I can't repeat how he fumbled the line, but like
Neither could he.
Yeah, true. But it really made me laugh, and just it was on a show where there's I don't think a ton of genuine moments. I felt that was very authentic, and I liked it.
Yeah.
Who killed it for you this week?
Who killed it this week? I know I'm taking a cop out here, but I'm gonna say the Lavender Lady crew.
Oh.
I'm saying them as a whole, and the reason I'm doing that is because they took their shot, right? Like, we didn't see the deliberation in terms of how they came up with this plan or who was the ringleader of this plan, but it was clear that each team in that alliance was like, hey, whatever. We need to get Johnny Bananas out of this house because we don't want to go against them in the final. And so we're all okay with the fact that we're going to vote them in, and whichever one of us they pick, we want all the smoke in the elimination. And I think that's how this game should have been played from the beginning. Make Johnny Bananas, make whoever it is that you're taking out, make them make the choice. Now, the other key element to that is they all kind of think that they're equal. Like, there's not an obvious choice in terms of which team you would pick to go against, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other interesting subplot of that whole thing. They all think that they're equally as good. So, I mean, they are, but also the plan was executed and it won. They went at the king and they didn't miss. So
that's true.
Yeah.
They did not miss. I think that for me, the MVP, I'm going to single out Sylvia.
Okay.
Because I do think that she's probably the mastermind behind that move. And ultimately, she's the one that won that competition. Like, she lost her temper a bit. She's too hard on my guy, Joss. But I think Sylvia deserves credit for... And, like, she went into that with confidence. And, like, you and I are big on that. She went in and she said, like, listen, when it comes to these elimination challenges, I bring it. Like, I bring the heat. So, like, if you want to call me in, that's fine. Ask, like, DJ Mel how it worked out for her. Like, you know, like...
I forgot about DJ Mel.
Yeah. But, like...
I forgot she existed as a challenge competitor.
And that she was on this season, too.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
But yeah, so I just really appreciated our beautiful bronze goddess coming in with confidence and getting it done. And I do think she was probably the key element in that plan. And it worked. It worked. It's not her fault that Shane and Nelson could not keep it together in the Purge challenge.
Nope, totally. One last thing before we go, though, John. I just wanted to bring up a comment because obviously last week's episode was super interesting, and there were a lot of, there was a clear line in the sand in terms of Johnny's side or Devin's side, and, a lot of drama going on, right? And there's a longer conversation that we don't have time to get into now, but I think probably in the reunion show, I assume it'd be a thing. Mm-hmm. But the reason I bring it up is because there's one comment that I vowed I would read on this podcast. And It comes from JoJo, and I want to say before I read this that it's all love. There's all been we've had a back and forth, so everything's good, and I find this hilarious, and so I encourage any and all feedback. But JoJo says she added me and you and said, "Love the podcast like always, guys, but I'm gonna need Sheldon to stop constantly justifying trash behavior. It's starting to taint the good you say. Bananas is wrong. Period. Like a 37 years of age, self-control is a thing. Hashtag you killed it."
Mm-hmm.
I just enjoyed that a lot.
I enjoyed it too. One thing I have to give a shout out to Sheldon Alexander and John Chidley Hill for being right about something last episode.
I don't remember.
We hypothesized that things were cut out from that argument between Devin and Johnny. And Devin, the next day, like after I had posted the podcast, he confirmed on Twitter, he sort of went on, not a rant, but he had 3 or 4 tweets where he explained that what really set him off is that Johnny, you described Nelson as the R word.
Yeah.
And
he said it, and then he walked away, and what made it seem like he said it and then realized he said it, knew he would get in trouble for it because that's already happened before, and that's what led to the, remember there was one of the Champs versus seasons, right? He had someone from the Special Olympics come on and be like his honorary partner and all that stuff. So the thought process was Johnny said that, caught himself in the moment, and then the reason why he was walking away from Devin was because he wanted the scene to end. He didn't want it to be a thing, so that's why he was walking away. Which, I mean, explains a lot. It makes total sense. Right? Then, it checks all the boxes.
And then Kayla backed that up and said that on a previous season, because she was only on this season for a minute, Johnny used the same word describing her and some other people. So I still don't, like, I've thought about it longer. I still think that, like, all parties were in the wrong. I think Johnny was most in the wrong, ultimately, like, when all the chips... Well, and Corey. But that, like, between the Devin Johnny thing, that, like, it certainly adds a little more ammunition to Team Devin.
1,000%.
In general, though, I gotta say, one thing that has put me off this season is the fans.
Oh.
Like, the nastiness of the online conversation and, like, the things that people are saying to the competitors and to you and I and to other, like, podcasts and just to each other. Like, if you are active in the Facebook fan group and stuff, it's just so nasty and, like, mean. Like, people are after Sylvia, or sorry, they're still just livid with Amanda, but they're also angry with Zach, or they're angry with, like, the Devin Johnny thing. Like, I think both of them would say that they were embarrassed how they behaved that night, and yet people are just, like, after them constantly. Like, it's so... The fandom is putting me off, just how nasty they're being. When at the end of the day, it's just a game show. Like, it's a very involved game show, sure, but, like, people need to, like, keep it in context, don't you think?
For sure. And I know this is going to sound way too overly simplistic, but I feel like I don't really see that much of the negativity. And it's not because it's not there. It's because literally once I start reading something that, like, I just keep scrolling past it. I don't even give it. I don't even read it. Like, I see it and I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, and just keep it going. And I know that that's like a blinders on. Like, I got the stunner shades on. You can't see me. You know what I mean? And, like, yeah, because again, I'm here for the jokes, right? It's a challenge. It's an MTV reality show. I'm here for the jokes. Now, there's times, obviously, where things get serious and we discuss that, and, people will have their opinions on both sides. And even with, what I was saying last week, I'm bringing, like, my real life sensibilities into a conversation about a television show. right? So
Yeah.
there's going to be people who are just going to disagree based off that alone. But we're all different people, right? So if I live my daily life in a sense where I'm like, I can't troll someone or say something to someone in their face consistently and then get mad when they turn around and react however, whether they say the meanest thing in the world to me, whether they punch me in the face, whether they do whatever, right? Like, that's how I live my life. Now, other people might have different, experiences, and so they act different ways. And much like you're saying, that's what a lot of this online like negativity is, right? Because it's a platform that gives people, if you allow it to, right, the opportunity to say whatever the hell they want because there's no repercussions. There's no one to punch you in the face because you said something stupid. You're talking out of pocket, right? You're being a Twitter thug, right? Like, so it kind of all ties in if I'm explaining this properly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so because the reminder of, we're just talking about a show. And that's why I mentioned the thing with JoJo too. Like, I laughed when I read this because I thought it was funny, right? Yeah. And then I quote tweeted and said something to the effect of, hey, no problem. Thanks for the dialogue. Like, we're just here having a conversation. And the response was, all love. And I co-signed, right? Like, we're just people talking about a television show. So, yeah. Chill, relax. All the negativity. As I said, I got the blinders on. I got the stunner shades. Can't see me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I have the blinders on too, but like it comes up in my feed sometimes, and I'm just like, good Lord, like everyone needs to settle down. Like, it does not need to be like this, just for a show. How can the people find you on social media, Sheldon?
You can find me tweeting a lot about the Raptors. I apologize for our American viewers, but if you're an American sports fan, you need to get familiar with the Toronto Raptors because they're going to the NBA Finals this year. But you can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And shout out to the people on the YouTube page watching, listening to the videos there as well. Shout out to you.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. I'm on staycation right now because I have 2 weddings this weekend, so no Twitter warning this week about things that I'm going to be covering. But if you follow me on Instagram, you're going to see how we party up north. So got that going for us. Fun. Yeah. Until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it.